you. This is going to be fun. I'm excited for our discussion. Thank you for joining us as well. My name is Ethan Pierce. We're going to start with just quick intros to give you some context about why these three particular people are going to be speaking about this sustainability and energy around everything decentralized conversation. And then we'll get into some meatier questions into the subject. But to start with that, we'll just go ahead and work our way through everyone. So please welcome to the stage my wonderful panelists. We'll start with Merlin.
Yes, hello. My name is Merlin Ostermann, and I am the CSO, Head of Strategy of Arkreen Network. We're a project about solar adoption, and at its core, it's also a lot about carbon offset. And my personal background and why I think I am qualified to speak on this panel is that I have an extensive background in sustainability. I did energy consumption consulting in my past for private households. But then it slowly transitioned over smart home integrations and IoT devices to this part where a core part of me is very fascinated by renewable energy, and this plays into where I am now and why I work there, and hopefully also why I'm here.
Daniel?
My name is Daniel Ammann. I'm with Onocoy, and we are making GPS accurate 2 millimeters. Now, I'm not a Web3 guy, but I've always been in satellite navigation for the last 25 years. First, building a company which built the semiconductor, so the actual electronics, the chips, the modules. And if you have a car, if you have a drone, there's an 80% chance that my chips are inside of that. When I learned about the Helium project, which is sort of the lighthouse in DePin, I figured out that what high-precision GPS, which is a technology that is known as such, how we can revolutionize that in order to bootstrap a network that anybody can build on top. And that's also where the sustainability part is. It's about sharing the infrastructure amongst an industry which is essentially competing also with the network. And DePin enables a sharing of such things.
And for Cult of Energy, to tell us all about that wonderful thing, Fredrik, please.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to...
You're on brand.
Yeah, brand, the Sourceful brand. Yes, Fredrik is my name. I'm the CEO of Sourceful Energy. And what we're building is I would say, the solution for bringing vast amount of renewables into the grid. We are working with exactly the problem that comes with decentralized energy resources on scale in society. So flexible resources is all that we're working with. And obviously, solar, batteries, EV chargers, all that. We want to connect them all. We want to do it on scale. And we want it to be easy and permissionless for every person, every homeowner to actually do that. And we are. So you mentioned Helium. That was my way into to Sourceful as well. So I was building on Helium 2021, I guess around the same time as everyone else. I quickly saw that this is a world-changing way to build new business and also new infrastructure. So I'm quite new into the Web3 space as well. And I think that's actually a cool story that with Helium and the DePin movement, we see more traditional players like us that actually joins in and are on stage at an NFT Paris event. I would never have imagined like 5 years ago, but that's the case.
So my name, again, is Ethan Pierce. I'm the founder of Borderless Ventures, which invests into Web3, AI, creator economy, sustainability, based in Tallinn and in Singapore. I live here in Paris. Also founded the Creator Economy Institute because I'm very passionate about how these technologies enable pretty much everybody to now build things through AI, no-code, Web3, all these kind of things, which takes us into our fantastic discussion around DePin. So for those of you, I'm going to assume since you're here, you understand that DePin means decentralized physical infrastructure, but that's really important to understand that DePin is infrastructure, because that's why a sustainability and energy conversation is very important, because we are talking about the compute resources behind all of this. So we are talking about energy usage, water usage, all of the ways that this impacts the environment, because these are the computers behind all the stuff we're talking about. And so to that point, first thing for maybe us to discuss is if Web 2 works, why do we need a Web 3 version of this? And I think that's really important because we're creating other sustainable things we have to tackle by changing the infrastructure. So before we get into those, why? Why do we want a Web 3 version versus the Web 2 version that already works?
I can start on this. I think that the first thing everyone needs to know about DePin is that it should be a Web 2 business that works. Otherwise, you should probably not do a DePin Web 3 version of it. That's at least my standpoint on this. So, and in talking about energy, and we'll go further on later on here, but yes, there are Web 2 solutions, but they are expensive. DePin can make this less expensive. So it's actually quite simple. You can solve the same problem with less capital cost. And helium is maybe the prime example of this. How do you build like an IoT network? It's really costly with infrastructure. You need to license radio towers. You need to do a lot of things, and it's costly. If you just distribute these decisions into the nodes of the system and are able to bring the rewards directly from more of the source, you can cut a lot of corners, both in the value transfer and also let people solve these problems themselves in a more effective way. Sort of like a beehive or whatever, like you solve things in the nodes of the problem. I think that's it. And for the energy space, it's an extremely hard problem for big utility companies that always consider everyone in here as a consumer. That's what you are for the energy companies. If you want to become something else than a consumer, they don't have the solution for that. They are profiting on selling the cheapest amount of energy and want you as a consumer. That's not how you build an energy network where everyone can participate with their resources. So there needs to come new solutions on this. So that's my take on it.
Daniel, Web 3 versus Web 2, why?
So I fully agree with what you just said. If there's not a Web 2 market, then why do a Web 3 version out of it? And in my point of view, just making it cheaper cannot be the only reason. I think there must be a more fundamental problem that you can solve, and you can. With a DePin approach, you can go into areas where for traditional industry, it wouldn't pay off. In the case of GPS, you need to have a station every 20 kilometers which measures the satellite signals, which in turn gives you a view of the delay and is a measure for the weather, the space weather, that you can compensate to make your GPS more accurate. A traditional industry, they will think twice whether it makes sense to cover a country with stations every 20 or 50 kilometers, because they look at the business case and see, does it pay off, and to what extent does it pay off? And not only they do that, but also their competitors. So in the end, if there is a big market, everybody will be competing there, and if there's a smaller market, nobody will go there because it doesn't pay off for any of those people. So mostly in Europe and in the US, in the GPS side, we have an oversupply situation siloed into each industry, whilst outside of that, Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, there's limited or no infrastructure at all. And the DePin can solve both problems. In developing regions, it can bring out a network, a cost-effective network, without having to have anybody spend the capex to set up that infrastructure and have it operated by a community. Whilst where there is an oversupply, you can welcome all those stations which are already there, operated by private companies, and share them amongst the industry. So there's no need for new infrastructure being rolled out, but reusing what is already there and sharing it amongst the industry. And I think DePin solves it in a very elegant way on both sides, where there's an oversupply, but also where there's an undersupply.
Merlin, thoughts?
Okay, yeah. My two friends here, Fredrik and Daniel, they have the professional background and they have the professional take. I will try the populistic take on this because, like, in essence, we're like, I would describe us all like as the third generation DePin. It went from the hype and an initial launch to phrases like, yeah, we use it to bootstrap something. Now we are all like almost thinking about we need the demand first before we even build the supply. Everything is really on workable solutions. And what I think about having a populistic approach on it is that I'm a very pragmatic person. So why DePin? DePin now because it has a little bit of adventure, excitement, and DIY in it. Like, the thing is, you don't, like, if you do, it also goes back to what Fredrik said about costs. Like, if you're a big company and you want to set up things everywhere, the costs are not just big because, but also because your company regulations, you're setting up everything with partners and distributors. It's very complex. In DePin, it's like, it speaks to the person who wants to get into the DePin to have this excitement of, I can have a technology which usually companies use. I can have it on my own roof, in my own basement. I have this device, I am part of it. I get a return of it. So it's very easy to understand for people, and they are willing to go above and beyond for it. Like, I have worked into other companies before also, and how, as a big company, securing a premium location in the heart of Paris, next to the Seine or something. Like, you don't know what costs you're facing there, like, but if a private user actually lives there and he gets your DePin device, you're already in it. And this is like what's happening in many steps in this. And so the adoption is much more focused on people that can live a little bit of entrepreneurship and a little bit of adventure, like get into the system, learn something. Like, I bet, for example, Onocoy, like, half of the people on their Discords are already 50% progress to GPS experts to some sense, because they just want to get into it. They want to understand it and make the best out of it. Like, private users, because they only have a few devices, they tend to maximize efficiency. They want to exactly know, where do I position it? How can I get like 2.7% more out of it? I want it to be all fine and streamlined. This level of attention, you don't get that on scale from a big company. You rather get it there. And my founder uses the term long tail market. I would rather describe it as like, we find people's niches. Like, usually, for example, with the solar, like Fredrik and my company is doing, like, the thing is, there are cool solutions if you are big. If you're a solar park, you can participate in carbon credits. If you have a certain threshold of kilowatt hours on your roof, you maybe get access to some certain things or devices. But some private homeowner with 3 to 11,000 kilowatt hours on his roof, he has this, and this is his own problem, and he can deal with it. But our companies deliver things, like both also here sitting, with combination of open source, easy available, cheap hardware, something that you can get a taste or a fraction of what the big players get, because our communities get collectively the service like a big entity would get. Like, all the Sourceful and Arkreen users get benefits like a huge solar park gets, because they are a community behind this company. And equally, it is like with Onocoy. You see this everywhere in DePin, and this is why I would say DePin is the way for this.
So you all touched a little bit on some examples, but I'd like to maybe dive in from each of your perspectives on how decentralized technologies are actually being leveraged towards sustainability. You mentioned a few different cases of it. Definitely, if we're talking about the edge users, the individual users, if their energy itself is renewable, that's already potentially an interesting improvement. It's spreading it out because maybe they're not all focused in one specific location. But for each of you, what are some of the actual applications where we see decentralized technologies making a difference in the energy and sustainability space?
Yeah, I think we could take if we speak about the grid, like we want more, like most people at least, want more renewables in the grid. And the cool story about renewables is that they are now by far cheaper than the alternatives. So this is just happening by itself because of market economics. The thing here is that solar PV only produces energy when the sun is shining. So even though it's extremely cheap, cheaper than all the alternatives, it's still problems, and it's also weather dependent. So if we look at Germany, for instance, that's a good example. Lots of people have installed solar panels. And we see the effects of this, at least in the Nordic and the German and Netherlands market, is that we have negative pricing daytime when the sun is shining. That's not good for anyone. Well, some people that might charge their car get paid for it, but in overall, it's not good. It destroys the market. And this also destroys the adoption of more solar panels, because who would ever want to buy solar panels if you need to pay the grid for producing power? That's what happens now. And why is this a problem? Yeah, the problem is that every single solar home rooftop owner are their own little island. That's how it works now. If the sun is shining, I'm doing as much as I can to produce energy. Like, there is no coordination. And why there is no coordination? It's like, the simple answer is that no one has built it and no one has made it effective. So, and how do you make that effective? If we can take the very, very extreme example of Germany. You can now install balcony solar. This is happening in Norway as well. You can put up 1, 2, 3 solar panels on your balcony and have a small microinverter. What do you think happens if we have millions and millions and millions of these? Even though they are pretty small by itself, they will impact the grid. How do you make them able to be coordinated? So if the grid doesn't need all that power at just that instant, which is the case, you should be incentivized actually not pushing power to the grid. It's in all interest. So these kind of solutions, I would say that this is an extremely hard problem for a Web 2 company to do. Not from the technical perspective. The technology is already there. We connect them and we send control signals. It's the incentive mechanisms that are the problem. And I think that's like what matters in this. And obviously, the question for sustainability, yes, if we can solve this problem, we will have more renewables in the grid. It's that simple. Like, the more coordination we have, the more renewables the grid can take. And if we believe that more renewables is a good thing, then this is a good thing. And if we believe that energy prices, if we want to pay less for energy, this is also a good thing. So you don't even need to be a sustainable person. You might just want to be cheap.
Daniel, thoughts on how decentralized technologies are being applied to energy efficiency and sustainability?
Yes, in the case of high-precision GPS, I think one of the key things is reusing of hardware, of installation, of rooftops, essentially, where you have those stations. In GPS, all you need is every 20 kilometers you need a station, and traditionally, companies, they try to extend that at the cost of performance, at the cost of end-user speed for precisely locating yourselves. But then, because they have a high capex, they spend a lot of money into making that piece of equipment super redundant. Redundant power supplies, redundant communications channels, redundant GPS receivers. So it's a very costly box placed at, say, 3-4 locations around Paris. Whilst in a decentralized way, you can take much more simple devices, more consumer-style, Wi-Fi access point-style devices for a few $100s, and place them every 20 kilometers on a rooftop, which only consumes a fraction of the energy, and it doesn't need to be that super high-end piece of equipment because it's good enough for the purpose that it's usable. And I think here it helps to make more efficient use of the electronics inside, to also, and that was the other aspect, to make sure that the industry can share that infrastructure amongst themselves. And if you look at mobile networks like cellular providers, there's also always been traditionally the case where the big ones, they operate their own towers, eventually moving towards sharing towers. But even today, they're sharing a location, but they're putting their own equipment on that tower, and you can rent space on a tower. The DePin is one step further. You don't have people operating towers and then mobile network operators putting equipment there. You actually have operators of towers operating that equipment themselves and sharing it in an automated way in a DePin manner. And I think that's where the sustainability effect comes in, because it's less infrastructure, it's more cost-effective infrastructure, it's less power-hungry infrastructure for a 24/7 operations. And I think that's key.
Yes, this is actually some things are very obvious if you think about things and look at the numbers. For me, it is the fact that we are still speaking about a specific niche customer group or user group in our communities, because it needs still some Web3 affinity. We're still finding the way for the bigger mass adoption. But within this sector, one thing is very funny to say. It's like every user who runs 2 or more DePin devices at home is one guy less that is mining crypto with GPUs. That's already a fun fact in terms of sustainability. But if we get into more niche things, yeah, because many of those originated from the fact that they started to mine Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever, and then they heard about this and they were like, oh God, I don't have to mess with my electricity bill anymore. This is a little bit how it started. And you have those people there that are tech savvy and get into this. And then sometimes it is that things build an ecosystem and others are good to combine. It's very easy. Like, of course, on my roof, there is space. I have an Onocoy device. But although my company is also doing energy monitoring, I in pair have a Sourceful device, because those things go well together. Within our company, we have also consumption. We have different products like solar tracking, a battery for the house is the next one, but also a power plug that does consumption tracking. Fun fact, the Onocoy device has already spent like 4 weeks on this. And it's very simple. In standby, it eats 2.5 watts, and on peak of data transmission, it eats 12.5 watts on an average of 4 watts maximum. That's nothing. That paired around private houses, like if you really just, like hardware, everything plays a role. Because it's all open source and you get the antenna even on second hand all around the market, or you get it rather cheap because they don't use proprietary hardware, for example. Like, it's very easy to access those things, so the solution is cheaper sustainability-wise, but also it consumes less. And then all these things that either go within an ecosystem altogether or pair with different ecosystems, they build this, again, this fascination of these things. People tend to think more, and it's all a drive for innovation and adoption. Because in essence, like those users, if they have already a solar panel and they learn they can do something with this and that device and get some extra incentives, then they are next like, okay, I can also do consumption tracking with smart plugs, and the rewards go up if I consume less, so I better time those things, have less standby consumption. And this goes on forever, like, because you can always do something, improve something, and those people, like many, it started with us going to people that have residential solar. Now we have the first users who are like, I have already this power plug, but I actually want the solar, so can you give me the easy route to how much solar should I install on my roof? And the next thing is the battery. Many people that always are like, when do I buy my battery for my house? When is the price good? We offer them a battery. The adoption is always faster with those things, and everyone can participate, and this builds a chain of sustainability in the sector.
So as we look forward then, what emerging technologies or market conditions, or what are the things that need to happen in order to see more adoption of DePin? Because it sounds like a lot of the sustainability is kind of baked in some ways. The fact that it is decentralized automatically is going to make it more sustainable because it's spread out. It's not just focused. It's potentially consumer hardware or less expensive, not as proprietary. The electricity of these users might actually be being sourced renewably because they're either making it themselves. It seems like some of that's baked in. So then a lot of the increasing the sustainability around this is just increasing the adoption of DePin infrastructure. So what are your thoughts about what needs to happen, whether it's tech or whether it's regulation, whether it's market conditions? What needs to evolve for this to grow more?
I think that whatever we're building now, we need to evolve to, like, I think that this applies for more or less every DePin project. We need to evolve to more consumer product friendly approach. We need to make it easy for users that never heard about crypto to be onboarded. It needs to be walletless, it needs to be frictionless in all means, and it should be easy for you to be onboarded. So I think that regulations are like obviously part of this. It needs to be easier to operate these kind of companies, and I think that we're on the right track. Like, this will be solvable. But I think that's what needs to happen. We have the technology already, so we don't need to invent that. It's just making it more better consumer focused, I would say.
Daniel?
If I may add, I think DePin has an important mission to bring blockchain technology to a world which is not in that Web3 bubble. It's a real world use case, and it's something that people they do understand because it's established, it's Web2 style businesses done in a different way by including a community. I think insofar it's super important to showcase those uses, those applications, all those thousands DePin projects that are around, what they're building. In times of meme coins and generally in the general public, everything around blockchain being seen as hype, as fraud, as speculation, and no real value, I think DePin has a much deeper mission than just being a Web3 bubble thing. It's explaining to the world what blockchain also can do for real industries, for consumer applications outside of that bubble. And insofar, it's also sustainability, not in the narrow sense of the word, but in a more broader sense of making blockchain a technology that is sustainable, that is understood by the whole world.
Merlin?
Yes, to tie in with what Fredrik said, I also have very strong opinions with making it more adoptable and more easy for customers. The thing is it's still, but why Web3 and then not Web2? Yeah, it all comes back to, I like my own term, it's BROI, it's borderless return on investment, because this is essentially what people want. If they want to get into this, they want some return on their investment with setting up these devices and taking part on the service. And the reason, also part of the reason why it is all on blockchain is because you can have this revenue much better dispersed over borders, because everyone has to do his own taxes and everything is much easier that way. So in this sense, the technology behind it and the reason to use blockchain is super valid and super important for everything to work. But on the front end, there needs to be, like Fredrik said, the easy version to it. It has to be seamless for the user, to the point where it feels like any other app I use, any other device I plug and play, easy setup, just log in, maximum a user account, and setting things up once with a lot hand-holding or simplification and speed up, so that you, in the end, you're taking part, but it has to be the customer experience of high-value Web 2. We just have to get there, and currently it's always the thing between some people want the crypto aspect so much and the blockchain aspect that it is clearly a selling point of it, but because it is such a technical market, DePin, you find more of the general customers that want the easy approach. They want things to feel like very traditional. And if they get this feeling, then it will bridge the adoption, and this will help sustainability, because in the end, every DePin, to some degree, is either solving financial sustainability or really environmental sustainability with their solutions.
Well, I think that's a good kind of point for us to kind of close out the discussion on that. But I do think it's really interesting just that when we see the amount of capital that's being put into the centralized infrastructure, when we see the Stargate thing in the US for $500 billion, France on Tuesday for the AI Summit announced $109 billion in investment. Yesterday, the EU announced another $200 billion, all into AI infrastructure. So we see the huge numbers being, well, AI, not just infrastructure, but primarily. And so we're seeing these incredible numbers around that, but what's really interesting here is the opportunity for that to not just be centralized, that there is a huge opportunity for The phone in your pocket is a supercomputer. You know, my refrigerator talks to my TV. Like, we've got all this processing power and stuff sitting out there on the edge. We talk about the other devices that you mentioned that can be made that are not necessarily as expensive or whatever to extend all these technologies. Decentralization can really take over the next step of this, and inherently is more sustainable for all the reasons that you mentioned. So I thank you for all of those great points. Please give our Rockstar panel a huge round of applause. And they'll be available in the back if you want to have a chat with them.